Good morning, Jim Whitehead. Today I'm going to be all Power Group. You know, we do Phoenix Animal, but what I've found, I need to bring up things that I've worked around with for many, many, many years. And when something happens, I like to give a synopsis. A actual discussion. Sorry. Oh, I know. It's tough getting old, right? Okay, so today we're going to talk about, because we just went through, I'm in South Florida on the West Coast now. We used to be on the East Coast. Yeah, hurricanes look the same on both sides when they hit you. But anyway, for over 20 years, I was a Generac, and I'm still a Generac dealer, but I had service agreements, and I had where I had to take care of anything wrong with someone's generator. That's great. It's a good business. But when a hurricane threatens, it's scary. And what I would do originally, or, you know, when we would get in a cone, you know, and typically when we get in a cone where they're saying, okay, it looks like it's going to go here, I would start going out for, let's say, unusual things for generators only because the storm was coming. You know, if they were close to needing a batteries we would replace every 2 years, give or take. But if, you know, hurricane's coming and we're, you know, closer to 2 years, yada, 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 do you want to have to go out at 4 o'clock in the morning with a new battery? So I would spend those 5 days running out and replacing anything that I felt might come up as a problem. By the way, you see, yeah, I'm an animal channel. I guess I had to put something animal. I just want to have and say that cats going around in circles do not create hurricanes. I know you were concerned about that. Now, someday we will be able to control the environment a little bit more. And I know there's been discussions of how to stop a hurricane, how to divert a hurricane. Some people have spoken about nuclear weapons, blow the hell out of it, but you know, in this point, there's nothing that we have that's going to have it where we go, oh yeah, we just push a button and it goes away. No, it's coming, and we will know where it's coming. And by the way, I have to compliment, and we watch CNN, we watch the Weather Channel. They are very good at looking at some bad, unorganized weather wherever. And in this case with Helene that just passed through, and unfortunately, a lot of people, I mean, I just hate to say all the implications of how bad this storm was. We were way down in the coast of Florida, and yes, the storm went by us. Yes, we had, I'd say, winds anywhere up to 50 miles an hour, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe a little bit less. We did lose, and I'm going to get into this. This is why I have a pet peeve that is funny in a way, but then not. But anyway, we ended up losing power for 3 hours. Now, the good news is I have a backup. And I used to have generators from Generac, and now I have EcoFlow equipment, mainly the Ultra battery system, and we very comfortably ran, and we could have run approximately 10 hours the way it's set up right now. Now, we are going to improve that by picking up a 240 volt generator that runs on propane I was a Generac dealer for years, and people would say, "Hey, can I put in will you install a portable Generac for me?" And I would say no. And they'd say, whoa, why? You're a generator guy. We pay you. I said, well, because you're not going to be happy. Gasoline is dangerous. Gasoline is expensive. Gasoline is hard to get when everybody else is trying to get it. Gasoline goes bad, and this is probably the biggest problem. Gasoline goes bad in 6 months, give or take, even if you treat it. And when I was fixing these for people, because I wouldn't sell them to them, but I would fix them every spring. Jim, my generator won't start. And you'd go and say, okay, is this fresh gas? I would know it's not because I could smell it. Walking up to the generator, honestly, and I don't have a nose like a dog. I could smell the gasoline, and it didn't smell like gasoline, so I said, no, you forgot to brush your teeth. But no, this gas is not bad. It is bad, excuse me. And what it does is, in any gasoline generator, they have what we call jets. Typically, maybe one. Generac had one. Tiny little thing where the gasoline goes into it, and it gets kind of sprayed, if you know what I mean. It's not just rolling a big amount of gas in. It's just spraying it into the cylinder, and then you create a spark, and it starts up. So I'd be fixing all these all year round, but especially in the spring. And as I said, a generator that can, and you see a lot of them advertise either bi-fuel, BI, meaning that it runs on gasoline and propane. And again, I wouldn't be running these on gasoline, period. Because people would store gas, it's dangerous, it goes bad, and all that stuff. They also have tri-fuel, which and there's very few that have this, but if you have natural gas, you can run these generators off the tri-fuel off of that. Okay, here's the funny part of this whole thing. And by the way, this is not scripted. This is all just what I see and what I know and how old I am. Okay, can you tell whether these wooden poles are new or have they been around? And this is a picture that I pulled via AI of we used to call them telephone poles when I was a kid. I'm 74. Anyway, I put in, show me poles, wooden electrical poles from 1900. This is what they picked, they put forth. It's even black and white. And that doesn't mean that everything's black and white. It means it's old. But this was circa 1900. And back then, of course, it seemed like, wow, this is cool. We sit in our home, power is delivered to us. But as we have gone for 120 years, we still have wooden poles. I mean, yeah, there's concrete poles, there's steel poles, aluminum poles, but we still have, you'd say, the highest percentage of our electrical grid is being delivered via wire sitting up on poles. Makes absolutely no sense, and I'll explain. And if you say, okay, did we have phones in 1900? Did we have this in 1900? Did we have that in 1900? If you sit there and go, well, we were thinking of refrigerators. I mean, things have over the last 120 years have either we didn't have them at all and they weren't even imagined yet, or we had them, started to have them, and then they got better. And then we would have today what you'd say is pretty good. But our wooden poles are still wooden poles. And part of the issue is, and this is, again, I'm going to try not to be too negative, but I have to tell you the truth. With these poles sitting out in the weather, the heat, hurricanes, wire, and they use aluminum wire, which is not copper wire. Copper wire is expensive and good. Aluminum wire is okay, but cheaper. And in my generator career, and again, I installed Generac generators for 20 plus years, we always used copper wire. I used aluminum wire once in 20 years. And that was only because it was a run of, and when you're doing a generator installation, you have multiple wires. So I used aluminum because the difference in price, and you can do it. It's code. You have to treat how you connect on each end, treating the end of the aluminum wire. Copper, like for example, on this particular job we did for a condo, it was about 300 feet. Copper wire that length and the multiple wires would have been $13,000. And I can imagine what it is today. That's going back to 2007. And the aluminum wire, same distance, same everything else, was $3,000. Now, you're not going to say, "Oh, that's cheap. Just buy some more and have it hanging around." No, we had to save the customers some money, so we used aluminum, but only once. So there you go. Old poles, and we used to love watching the electrical guys come to these poles. I was born and raised in Rhode Island, living in a town called Barrington, Rhode Island. And we would love when the electrical guys would come around and they had spikes on their boots, and they had a leather belt, and they would put it around the pole, and they would just basically, with their spikes on their boots, climb up, pull up so they didn't fall backwards, and get up to do what they needed to do. And I said to myself when I was probably 5 years old, that's what I'm going to be when I grow up. So when I did grow up, I ended up doing healthcare for many years, but then I did generators, and I'm still doing generators. So is it close? I don't know. Anyway, the funny thing with and I'm not going to particularly pick on one power company, because it's all kind of all of the above, if you know what I'm trying to say. They all tout, our trucks are all lined up. We're ready to go out. Well, here's where the problem is. They won't go out if the winds are more than 40 miles per hour. So in other words, you get where you're saying, what good are you? Now they'll say, well, we have to wait until the storm's over. Well, then, and you'll see pictures of poles being down, trees being down. They probably can't even get to them. So they can have all the trucks in the world. And I know I go off on tangents, but we were kind of like in the edge of tropical storm warnings. And in essence, we had it where we had winds that might have been 25, 35, 45, 55. We lost power for 3 hours. And somebody said, wait a minute. on that wind, you lost power for 3 hours. And thank goodness we had a EcoFlow backup. So, that was good. So moving on, now they have bucket trucks. And of course, that guy shouldn't even be up there. So that isn't even probably a real picture, because he's out in the, if an electric bolt is going to come down, and is it going to hit the ground, or is it going to hit this guy sitting up in a bucket truck? We admit the buckets aren't metal, thank God, but probably the actual, what it's attached to, to leverage it up. But what is he doing? Well, actually, with that pole, each transformer that's up in the air, up in the wind, up in the sun, heat, they have these semi-exposed fuses. And like when we lost power yesterday, I went out and you check your electric meter. If it's not showing anything, well, power's not going to your meter. But then I walk out to the street and look up where our transformer, and here in Naples, we go Golden Gate. There are 2 homes on each transformer, and I check the fuse, because again, if it's one pole's fuse blows, it doesn't hurt anybody else or stop their power, but it will for you, and you can sit there all day waiting for it to come back on. It never will. They have to come out. And sometimes they do this from the ground, sometimes not. They have to put a new fuse in. Because what happens is the fuse pops, the whole holder pops down, the fuse drops to the ground, and, FPL will come out and they have to put a new fuse in. Now, what if they blow hundreds and hundreds of fuses? When are they going to get to you? So it's really, really very interesting. Now, this is scary too. This is a demonstration of electrical transformers. This was a little more, how would you say, beefed up. But the same point is massive high voltage electric, sometimes 10,000 volts, 17,000 volts, could even be higher than that. They come into the transformers. And what the transformers do, they take that very high voltage and they bring it down to what homes use. And that would be 120 volts on one line come into the home, 120 volts on another line, so you can have either things that run in 120 running, or things like air conditioners, hot water heaters, etc. They run in 240. So the high power comes in, it then gets transformed down to that which the home can handle. Well, these blow. And I'm telling you, back when I was in 2017, I think it was Hurricane Irma, I stayed out because I guess I feel better staying out with my customers, even though my wife would keep saying, "When are you coming home? You're stupid." Anyway, bottom line, at that particular storm, you could see transformers blowing from a distance. And that's only related to winds. And not even winds that you'd go, whoa, yeah, it's going to blow everything down. No, they're just exposed. And they could be not in great shape anyway. So they're like, well, this is going to push me over the edge. I'm going to explode. So, when I was coming home that particular storm, because again, I was out with generators. I'm not now, even though I did enjoy it. I would be driving home in this one particular storm, and between trees being down already, and I could see transformers blowing, and poles started to come down. I had trouble getting home because I go down this street and it'd either be a pole down, trees down across the road. And I say, well, I can't get home this way, so I have to turn around, go back the other way, and finally get home. I did get home. Anyway, okay, this you will see, and again, this is a picture, could be anywhere, and 50 years ago. But the point being, you're going to see a lot of pictures like this up in the North Florida, Georgia, where they all just come down. They're wooden. And when I said earlier about the spike boots, spike marks, where these great electrical guys and who I wanted to be when I grew up, they, the tree, they just break and come down because they're wood, and they could be the original wood poles. I mean, over on here in Naples and over in Davie and the other side of the state, if somebody had a wooden pole in the back of the yard that was used to go from, across and back to another home, I could see spike boots marks. And they haven't been climbing poles like that for 70 years. So that means those wooden poles are the original poles. And they're not going to last forever. And I would go into very high-end neighborhoods, and they'd have poles that were sitting like this. Like they hadn't gone all the way over, and this is just normal. I'd say to my customer, when are they going to replace that pole? Well, we've called about 28 times. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And and I'm sorry, I'm talking too much, but that's the epitome of monopoly power companies. No one is saying to them, upgrade your infrastructure, improve things. They more or less only fix what breaks. Not like, well, that transformer over at Jim's house up on a pole has been there for 30 years. And how these transformers work, by the way, they have oil inside them. And that's how they come. And somebody said, oil? The point was they have to try to keep these cool. So in other words, if they were just a metal container without anything inside, you can imagine up in the sun how hot that would get. So the oil helps keep the transformer internally cooler. Well, here's what happens, and you can look up at one that's all rusty, and it could very well be where it sprung a leak. And FPL, excuse me, didn't mean to say a specific company. Any of the power companies will go, they don't see it, but that particular transformer is going to be more prone to blowing up. And blowing up can start fires. So there is nothing exciting about this whole thing. Now, the other thing you get into is that these are all very old, and what I started to say with a monopoly-based company, nothing is forcing them to upgrade their infrastructure. When all these poles, and you're going to see multiple pictures, all these poles that were wooden up, North Florida area, you're all going to see them down. And what's going to happen is, do they come with better poles, new poles, sometimes new wooden poles, if the pole's like cracked in, in half. But they just put everything back up like it was. And any of us with any common sense would go, if something in my yard is wrong and it got demonstrated in a storm like this, and it get broken or knocked down or destroyed, whatever, we would go, okay, what are we going to do to have it where it's going to be better for the next time? We do that. That's normal. Electric companies don't. And you even will hear the Weather Channel, CNN, and they start out when they're talking about a storm's going to hit such and such. The first thing they say out of their mouth, and this is why we accept this. We just let it go, and we keep paying our bill. And the first thing out of their mouth is, there's going to be widespread power losses. Well, that's because everything's above ground. Now, somebody might say, well, but Jim, my particular neighborhood, the electrical is underground, and you see these, they're typically green, dark green transformers at the ground level. That's good. That's good. Is that going to blow away? Probably not. But here's where the problem is. If somebody says, oh, yeah, I'm fine, they'll say, well, did you lose power? Well, yeah, because, and I'm going to use one example. It's called Hawks Landing over in Plantation, Florida. Yeah, they have all underground wiring because it was a much newer neighborhood. But, and even customers say to me, I don't know why we lost power. It's all below ground. I said, but the source of where your power is coming from is outside the neighborhood. And guess what? It's all in above ground, what we call, power stations that are all covered by, fences and barbed wire, but they're exposed. So, your neighborhood might be below ground, but everything that's sending the power to you is below ground. Is above ground, excuse me. So it's a little bit better, but not much. So anyway, we lost power for 3 hours yesterday. It was windy off and on. It wasn't anything related to this right here, and that's the other thing, the domino theory. 4 miles from here, they really have a big problem with a pole going down or something going into one of these substations. And everybody that's down the line, like the dominoes, all fall down. So there you go. Now, the preface that I started to talk about monopoly-based companies and what this situation is. Okay, and this is not acceptable, but we keep accepting it. Bottom line, when, like for example, there are going to be thousands of electric trucks from all over the country down to North Florida, Georgia. They call them all in from, as many teams that they can get. And what they're going to do, is they're just going to put everything back up the fast. Because, people need to get their power back on unless they have a generator or a power generator. So they if a pole's just down and they can put it back up, they will. And it isn't like, well, let's just temporarily put that up and we'll come back. No, they don't. Well, it doesn't make any difference. It's going to go down again anyway. So here's where the catch is. And I know this is a little political, but if the power companies were responsible for payment of all these additional people, plus their people working around the clock, if that was covered by the electric company, And they say, wow, we're bringing people from New York and yada, 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 and it's going to cost us millions of dollars. Well, no, it isn't. Because they are allowed to pass the cost to the customers. So somebody might say, well, they try to say, well, it's an additional $6 a month times everybody. Now, admittedly, am I going to die because I have to pay $6 a month for however long extra to pay for their work? It's their system. It's their, and I'm going to say I'm not going to say shitty. I'm not going to say it. But it's their terrible system. But they're like, why should we change and fix things and put a lot of money into improving the infrastructure? Because if we do that in advance of things, we pay for it. I mean, they pay for it. So if they said, well, we got 4 poles in my area that we know are bad, and they go out and replace them, that's on their tab. But if they don't fix those, and they go down, and hopefully they're not we're going to put them back up. They'll put a new pole, and in some cases they might put a stronger pole, maybe. We pay for it. So that just, has it where when I show you, and by the way, this picture I'm showing you is current day poles. So, it's not that, you look at polls of yesteryear and you go, wow, that was interesting how they looked back then. Well, they look the same. So, anyway, I know I love going off on tangents, and again, I know this isn't technically animal related, but I always have said, I did a presentation a couple weeks ago about making sure your dogs are in good shape and talking about, as much as when we lose power, they lose power, and we want to make sure they have water and good cold food, fresh food. Anyway, so that's about all I'm going to have to say. So, I mean, if you ever have a chance, fix the system, strengthen the grid. And, it's like I've heard, and I'm not blaming on, I'm not blaming any current president, but I know it was stated where they more or less said, please, electric companies, improve your infrastructure because it's an aging grid. Now, if it's an aging grid, it's because no one's done anything for years and years and years. So it's an aging grid. What do you do when you have an aging car? When it starts costing you money, you potentially sell the car or trade the car in and get a new car. So because we're paying for FPL, they don't care. They don't say, well, we're going to make it where these poles can't go down. But they don't, because again, we pay for it, so who cares? Anyway, thank you very, very much, and I know this is probably not going to have a tremendous benefit of where people are going to all be, contacting their congressman to say, we want better electrical infrastructure. Ain't going to make any difference. It's political. What I've always said, you've got to take care of yourself. Since I was a generator guy for 20 plus years, I always had a generator. Because I had to keep my home safe, everything going fine with my home, my wife, my animals, so that I could be out fixing, and taking care of generator problems. And a lot of it, the scary part of generators in essence, and you're going to see this, unfortunately, a couple things happen. One, if they have a standby generator that's in their yard on a slab that, depending on how high it needs to be up, it will be, because there's certain code to ensure that if you're in a flood zone and all that stuff, but doesn't make that much of a difference. But they some of these generators get swamped. So it's kind of scary for these people that had generators up in that area. When you have a storm surge, it could be, and I know they were forecasting, and we'll hear the after point, but we were having storm surges up in North Florida of like 20 feet. Now 20 feet is not livable. And if you have a generator on the ground that's up on a 6-inch slab or a 2-foot slab or a 3-foot slab, guess what? The generator is going to get swamped. So you're not going to have a generator. So I always feel bad because generators cost, standbys cost anywhere from 20 to 30,000, give or take. Unless you can do some of the work yourself. But you got to get inspections and permits, and it really is pretty involved. And if a storm comes through and the water's so high that it swamps your generator, these generators are not on, the cabinets you see, and you see it on the Weather Channel, Generac advertises. And I'm not saying it's Generac's fault, but the point is, these generators are not weatherproof. So what happens is if there's, water intrusion, your generator's gone. And, typically a lot of it is salt water. And I don't have to tell you how salt water has a tendency to rust things. And most of you would know that. So anyway, thank you for listening. I get it off my chest because, when I see these companies, these, utility companies going, we're here for you. We'll be out there. Well, they'll be out there after the fact, and who knows how long. And the customers are going to pay for it. So why would they make anything better other than just quickly patching and putting it all together with nails and glue? What's going to happen next time? We have another storm that's out, scary, a little bit west of Cuba, exactly how Helene started up. And, talking about the weather, the Weather Channel, my hat is off to them because they do a wonderful job at looking at something you and I would look at and go, it's just a little bit of thunderstorms, yada, yada, yada. And they can sit there, as they did with Helene, they're saying, okay, I know it doesn't look like very much now off the coast of Cuba, but it's going to turn into a hurricane. And most people go, oh, it's, I don't know. Well, most of the time, I'd say about 99% of the time, they're right. The tough part is really forecasting immediately then the direction. They know approximately, they can say, well, the jet stream and a low pressure here, a high pressure there. And the wonderful computer models, the European model, the US model, and many others, it does a very good job on saying, okay, yeah, this blob of nothing is going to turn into a hurricane. And it starts to, as it forms, it says, well, now it is looking like a storm, and it's going to go northeast, north. And in this case with Helene, anyway, was, I'm sorry to say, catastrophic. And the panhandle area of Florida is, unfortunately, a lot of times has a big X on it for come here. And the problem is, down in Naples, we're right on the south part of Florida. We have Florida Bay around us, and we have the Gulf. These type of storms generally, especially where this one's starting out again, the new one, and it might be nothing, it could be a lot. It will go north, but as they were showing when it was kind of getting its act together, that it's either going to go to the east, to the north, to the west, which would take it more heading toward Louisiana, Texas, etc. We don't know right now. But as certainly the storm gets its act together, the models do a much better job of giving a forecasted track. But as you say, the cone is wide. All that's saying the storm isn't necessarily, it could be wider than that, than the cone, but they're saying, well, it's not going to be exactly in the middle of this cone. It's going to be either to the left, to the right. Yes, it could go up the middle, but either way, especially a storm this size, there are going to be effects all over. We're 90 miles. I know I keep talking, and it's like people are going to say, give up. But, we're 90 miles from the east coast of where I lived in Davie, Florida. And, the 90 miles with this particular storm was so big that even, because we have a lot of our family over there still, they were like, yeah, we're getting wind and rain. And in this case, it was some of our current storm that actually had bands that were going totally across the state of Florida. So I pray, one particular husband and wife, and I'm not young, and I don't want to leave this home. But the recognition is I still want to live. So if it's that bad, I wouldn't stay here. But these folks, and some of you will be familiar with Sanibel Island and Captiva. Captiva is, you go across Sanibel, you go out on Sanibel from Fort Myers, and Sanibel, and then this land gets skinnier and a little bit lower, and you get to, you go across the bridge, and now you're in Captiva. These islands are extremely low, and a elderly couple, and I've not got any updates on this, but and the older you get, this, you say, I don't want to leave my home. I've been here for 25 years, whatever. I don't want to leave. And of course, they say it's an evacuation area. We don't want it to be that way, but it is. These folks said, well, we went through, I think it was Ian. I'm terrible with names sometimes, but they stayed on Sanibel for Ian, which would have been in, I think 2017. Yeah, 2017. And they were okay. Well, unfortunately, they were staying same home on Sanibel through this storm. And I would hate to say, I doubt if they're here. And they might say, well, whatever, and I don't even know. I pray for everybody. That's how I am. And animals too. Because we want to make sure you're okay. But when they say to you evacuate, you have to. Please do. If we get another storm. Because, and I had some people saying, whoa, I hadn't been through anything like this, and I didn't expect this. And as you know, the wind is a big problem, we know that. But all the weather people will say it's actually the water intrusion that is worse in most cases than the wind. And of course, the higher the wind, the more water it pushes into certain areas, so you have a phenomenal amount of storm surge. And again, they were forecasting up to 20 feet of storm surge, and no one would survive in anything like that. But anyway, thank you very much. I hope this did not affect you. I hope if it did, that you're going to be okay. And just remember, if you have an opportunity to put 2 cents in about how our electrical should be handled, because if any of the electric companies had to pay out of pocket for all the fixing their infrastructure, they would build it better. Because they say, well, we can't keep spending the same money, or not the same money, more money on the same thing. This pole's been put up 4 times. Well, let's face it, it's going to go down easier than it did the first time. So please, if you have any political opportunity of having it where these power companies are held responsible for their systems. Anyway, thank you. And again, I hope this didn't negatively affect you. And please be well. And thank you for letting me talk forever. Thank you.